and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Bard's College of Whispers class specialization from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The bards who hail from the College of Whispers are not really the kind of bard that anyone really wants at a party that they might be attending. In fact, they usually impersonate bards that are not from the School of Whispers to achieve a level of trust before they all of a sudden turn around and extort and threaten the very patrons that they were just entertaining. School of Whispers bards are essentially evil versions of bards from the College of Glamour, much like the anti-paladin is to a paladin. Although that might actually be a bad example, because an anti-paladin might not necessarily be a bad paladin if the paladin was evil in the first place. But this is because the bards use their position to glean information from various sources for the sole purpose of gaining wealth and power over others. As such, it is going to be entirely up to the DM if they will allow a character to choose this particular school, as it might go against the nature of the game, but there are DMs out there who would welcome this sort of character in some campaigns, especially if there's a bit of a versus concept to that particular campaign. As per our previous videos, the Bard chooses their class specialization at level 3, and this is when they will gain their first feature from the College of Whispers subclass. So let me just quickly drop this into place, and I will choose College of Whispers. The first feature your character is going to acquire is called Psychic Blades, and this feature becomes available immediately after choosing the School of Whispers as your character subclass. This feature allows you to enhance your typical weapon attacks with extra psychic damage at the expense of some bardic inspiration points, but this can only be done once per round and only on your turn. The total amount of damage dealt is initially 2d6 points of psychic damage, but at levels 5 to 9 this will increase to 3d6 points, while levels 10 to 14 will be able to do 5d6 points of damage, and finally 8d6 points of damage at levels 15 and up. As long as your character has bardic inspiration points available, you will be able to make use of this feature. And to be able to set it up for use, all you have to do is switch to your Actions tab, drag and drop it into place, and then create a subgroup called College of Whispers. And that will drop it into this grouping here. Now it's already set up for use. The only thing that you will have to do when in a particular combat scenario is tick this off here for the Bardic Inspiration point and then click the effect before you roll the damage. So for example, right now the Bard's turn is the active turn. They're going to target this adult black dragon. They're going to attempt to hit that dragon, which at this level might actually not work. Oh, look at that. I actually managed to target nobody. There we go. I'm going to say that hits. But anyway, what you would then do is tick off a Bardic Inspiration point, add the effect to your character, and then, and only then, would you roll the damage. Now, a dagger against a dragon, not going to do a whole lot of damage, but you get the point. The effect has now gone away from our character, which means that it is working the way that we want it to. Also at level 3, your character will gain the Words of Terror feature, giving your character the means to instill fear into anyone who has listened to your character speak for up to 1 minute. Anyone your character speaks to in such a manner will be required to make a Wisdom saving throw, otherwise they will be frightened of your character or of another creature that your character has selected for approximately 1 hour from the conclusion of that conversation. An example would be that maybe your bard is having a conversation with an orc at a ball that your character happens to be attending, and through that conversation, your character is able to convince the orc that a knight at the ball is there to kill them, and that they might end up fearing that knight over the course of the next hour or so if they failed their saving throw. However, if they are attacked and damage is done, or manage to witness an ally of theirs being attacked and damage done to them, the fear effect will break off before the end of that 1 hour duration. So you can essentially see that this is primarily useful in social situations. There is a restriction of this particular feature, however, and that is that the target you are looking to instill fear into must be humanoid based. But there does not appear to be a restriction on if that character has to understand a language that you in turn are speaking. However, because there's both a fear effect as well as a wisdom saving throw requirement, you're going to want to add this to your action tab and move this into the College of Whispers group. I have no idea why I want to put an H after the P there. For the most part, this is set up, but you'll want to click on this to make sure that the actual saving throw is updated to the correct value, and if you want, you can get rid of one of these particular frightened effects, just to clean things up a little bit. I'm not sure why it creates two, but that could be just the wording that's there, and that might be down here. Yeah, okay. Now, there is also a restriction to this in the sense that you can't use it again until you finish a short or a long rest. So we need to make sure that we set up the uses of this. And to do that, that will be Words of Terror, 2 after a rest. Oh, wait, 1 after a rest. My apologies. And that's it. Now, how this gets used is primarily in a social situation. Your character would literally have to talk for a total of 10 rounds within a combat scenario at a particular target, and that's the sole action they should be doing in order to be able to instill fear into that target. So it really doesn't make sense to use it in a combat scenario, but if you're at a party or you bumped into somebody along the side of the road or you're in an inn or a shop or something like that, it definitely would fit. And all you would do is you would talk to that individual for a period of 60 seconds and then attempt to have them roll a saving throw. So in the case of this, I'm going to unselect the dragon and select the succubus, which is humanoidal in form, and then I'm going to make them roll, and in this case they succeeded. Now if they succeed, they're not really going to notice that anything's been happening. But if they fail, they would now have the frightened effect applied to them, and you could set it up so that they could be theoretically frightened, for example, of this dragon, or frightened of a zombie, or something to that effect. Although a succubus frightened of a zombie, that would be a laughable item, but you get the point. At level 6, your character will gain access to the Mantle of Whispers feature that essentially allows your character to wear a quote-unquote shadow essence of another humanoid as a cloak over your character, taking on their visual appearance as a disguise. Your character would need to see the death of the humanoid in question and must be within 30 feet of where that creature dies in order to be able to capture their shadow. This shadow is available to your character until you choose to use it or until your character completes a long rest. Your character can then apply the disguise as an action, and what that is that your character will suddenly change appearance, becoming a nearly indistinguishable version of the shadow's original owner. As a result of the use of this disguise, your character will gain enough of an understanding of the creature to be able to pass your character off as being that creature, but there won't really be any secrets that the character might have been holding divulged to you in that particular process. So, for example, if your character captures the shadow of an orc who died in combat, and that orc knew of a secret entrance into the facility you are about to enter, that information would not be imparted to your character when you activated the effects of the shadow. Your character would, however, gain enough knowledge of who and what that orc was to be able to walk through the front gates, and only suffer a minor risk of being detected. It is possible for others to see through this disguise, but they would have to make an insight-based check contested against your own deception roll with a +5 bonus applied to your roll. Once you've captured a shadow, your character will be unable to do so again until they complete a short or a long rest. So we should add this to our Actions tab so that you can track its use. Let's go ahead and drop this into place and move it down to the College of Whispers, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to cut and paste this. And then we want to set it up for 1 daily use. Yeah. Oh, I should also set it up to be, sorry, wrong one. That's daily. This is actually rest, not 1 daily use, sorry. It's rest. So it will cover both a short and a long rest. So how would you go about using this? Well, let's say in combat, this bugbear died. You would then be able to make use of the Mantle of Whispers to capture its shadow, if you will. And then for a period of roughly 24 hours, or until you complete a long rest, you would then be able to hold that shadow sort of in the background or the back of your mind. And then when you need to use it, you call it forth, you assume the shape of the bugbear chief, and then you are effectively that bugbear chief. The dungeon master would then be obligated to do a lot of the question answering that your character might end up suffering on behalf of the chief's subordinates, feeding you the information as required. But in addition to that, the dungeon master would also have to execute a long rest in order for you to be able to regain the use of that particular ability again. So I'm going to execute a long rest, and as you can see, it now comes back. But at this point, if your character has completed a long rest, you have now lost the use of the Bugbear Chief's shadow. So essentially, you're using the results of the combat scenario to potentially fulfill a social scenario at some point down the road. This feature gives your character the ability to use fear to essentially charm a target you have selected. The process is quite simple. Once your character has selected a target, your character would enact the feature and whisper a phrase of some kind that only the target will hear, even if your character is surrounded by other patrons. That target must then make a wisdom-based saving throw or risk being charmed by your character for up to 8 hours. And there is a catch, though. The target must be able to understand the language that your character used to speak the phrase, otherwise it will automatically succeed on its saving throw. But if charmed, they will obey your commands, and they won't really do anything that puts themselves in harm's way or risk itself unless it is already inclined to do so. But the target will also grant you favors as gifts, as if your characters were close friends for a long period of time. For any creature that saves on the wisdom saving throw, though, they will simply hear a series of unintelligible words and not know their origin, essentially thinking that it was nothing more than background chatter that just got all jumbled up. When the charm effect ends, the target will have no understanding as to why they feared you in such a way, but they might not be as friendly to you for a number of days. This feature can only be used once before your character will be required to complete a long rest in order to regain its use. So let's go ahead and add this to our Actions tab. Once again, I'm just simply going to copy and paste this and put that there, and that will drop it down into the appropriate grouping. I'm going to pop this open so that the saving throw is updated to the appropriate value, and we can see that the effect is already in place. The only thing we have to do is set up the use restriction, which is once daily. Beyond that, the effect and the feature are now ready to be used. In a combat-based situation, it might not necessarily work so well, but you might be able to make use of the effect, if you will, on this particular bugbear chief. They will understand common if that's the language that you're going to speak the whisper in, and what they would end up doing is making a saving throw in an attempt to either succeed or fail, and in this particular case they have failed, so they would effectively be charmed. Now that effect was already there from prior, so I'm going to redo that and drop that into place. Hopefully they fail again. Yep. And then all you do is drag the effect, or if you have them targeted, simply click the effect and it will apply, and now they are charmed for a period of 8 hours. I'm not entirely certain why the duration isn't there, but if you want the duration to be represented there, what you could do is modify this effect and put in 8 and set it up for hours, and that way the effect would remain for 8 hours, although if you're in a combat situation, chances are he's not surviving for 8 hours. Any graduate from the College of Whispers is essentially the polar opposite of those who graduated from the College of Glamour, and use almost the same forms of power, but will use this to gain wealth and power over others. These bards are an interesting variant of the Glamour bards, but as I've not yet had a player use one, nor have I played or seen one played, I really can't say much more about the subclass. However, this does bring us to the end of the subclass's list of features, and thus the end of where we can go for the bard in relation to the subclass. I hope you found this video informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.